think we have. They're here to tell you about it if you want to come on up to the podium. David Hollinshead and Mike Clausen. Mike is the general manager with Republic. They're here to make a presentation, and the good news is sludge as of March the 1st is no longer being accepted. I think it's something that many of you have wanted to hear for a long time. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you, and you can talk to them about it.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, presentation's up. Good afternoon. As Mayor Davis said, my name is Mike Clausen. I'm the general manager for Republic Services out of our sort of Middle Tennessee business unit, of which Bradley County Landfill is one of our sites there. I'm sure all of you already know this, but Republic acquired Santec Environmental Services in late May of last year. Santec had the operating agreement for running your Bradley County landfill for the operation of that facility. And so that's now our responsibility, and it certainly is a pleasure to be speaking with all of you here. As Mayor Davis has said, and if you'd like to just go to our next slide. Okay. Thank you. I think you all have copies of this if you can't quite see. So as Mayor Davis had said, so after the acquisition of Santec last year, and kind of a review of the quantity of that sludge that we were taking. And that sludge, again, is a wastewater treatment sludge from Cobb County, really metro Atlanta. So that's the particular material we're talking about here. Really reviewing the amount of sludge that was coming here, listening to the mayor, listening to you all, listening to some constituents, understanding that was certainly a point of contention, a piece that folks weren't really happy about. We decided to stop taking this sludge material effective March 1st. So as of about 2 weeks ago, that material is no longer coming here to the county from Cobb County, which I think is a great thing, and you all would agree with that. The other kind of piece of that is, Republic, we're obviously a Fortune 200 company. We have 200 landfills spread across the United States, sort of have maybe a more advanced level of how we handle solid waste management in communities. And so we have what's called a wet waste target. So in landfills, you want to have, if you have too much wet material, it can impact the health of the landfill. It could potentially impact the stability of a landfill. It's harder to build something stable out of mud than it is out of dry soil, right? So we were looking at that. The Bradley County landfill was above what we like to see as our ideal target for the amount of wet waste coming in. Also, in talking with Cleveland Utilities, we've been noticing some impacts to the leachate, which is the liquid that comes out of the landfill that we extract and then send to Cleveland Utilities. So I've been working closely with them as well to kind of understand what's going on there. So all that is to say that the current conditions or the prior conditions just really weren't sustainable for us or for your landfill, and so that's why we made this decision. That being said, item 3 here, so the Cobb County sludge waste stream represented approximately 50% of all of the revenues for the Bradley County landfill. So that's both the revenues to Republic and the revenues that come to the county as royalties based on a percentage of the revenue that we come in. So 50% of all of the revenue coming in is now gone. So what we're looking to do is a new strategy is needed, which really balances the health of the landfill with the economic benefit that we all kind of expect, and we have an obligation to you to deliver as operators of your landfill facility. Next slide, please. So what that option here that we are recommending and seeking approval from you all as commissioners is what's called liquid waste solidification. So liquid waste solidification fills a key gap in the marketplace for industrial and off-spec liquid wastes, which cannot be discharged directly to sanitary sewers. So really important to distinguish this from, this is not biosolids, this is not sludge, this is not large out-of-state customers. These are more local type businesses and industries that might have liquid waste that they're not able to put in sanitary sewers. By regulation, that liquid waste, in order to be disposed in a landfill, you first have to solidify it. So I hate to oversimplify it, but kind of a picture of what a solidification pits look like is up there. We're really just taking in that liquid waste within the lined footprint of a landfill, mixing it with something like a sawdust or maybe some other sort of bulking or binding agent to dry it up, and then just disposing it at the active face of the landfill along with all the other wastes. So liquid solidification is an extremely common program at landfills across the country, including the majority of permitted facilities in Tennessee. So this isn't something that's new or really cutting edge whatsoever. Most facilities in Tennessee and really the United States have the opportunity to, and we certainly see some of those opportunities. Some of the closest landfills to Bradley County Landfill are already doing this, already have permitted solidification pits. Important to also note that solidification is regulated by TDEC, just the same as who's the Tennessee Department of Environmental Conservation, and governed by those same Republic Services standards that we kind of implement for the health of landfill facilities. So the ask here is what's needed to start a liquid waste solidification program. First and foremost is county approval. So TDEC requires that we have this meeting here and a resolution passed for approval by the commission prior to reviewing a permit application from us. From there, if they're getting your approval, we just submit a really simple, it's called a permit by rule. So it's literally just a 3-page little document we send to TDEC asking for their approval. We've already had preliminary conversations with them. They're absolutely already indicating willingness for that approval. And from there, we really just have everything else is on our shoulders. So we find some different municipal solid waste tons, which are those dry tons that we can mix with the liquid waste. Of course, staying below our tonnage cap, which we have as a requirement in our operating agreement with you. So the landfill cannot grow to a large regional sort of mega landfill. It's capped at a certain number of tons per day, and nothing in there changes whatsoever. And then we have a little bit of investment to make in some heavy equipment and other on-site infrastructure in order to sort of create this program. Again, that's no additional cost to the county whatsoever, although the upside here certainly is that as we replace that 50% of the revenue, the county certainly shares in that as we grow the program. So our goal here is to begin marketing liquid waste in the local marketplace to local industries and businesses for acceptance beginning in April. And that's kind of summarizes the proposal that we have. I believe you have a resolution in front of you. You'll notice on that resolution also there's a specific sentence in there that says accepting liquid waste, kind of a condition of that will be that we do not again accept the wastewater sludge from Cobb County. So I wanted to make sure you all saw that in writing. It's in the resolution, something that we're going to stand up and agree not to do. So with that said, certainly happy to ask questions or solicit feedback. Yep.
Mr. Black. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple questions, if I may. You mentioned that, hold on, sir. Sorry.
No worries.
You mentioned that other landfills are already doing this process. Can you name any of those for us?
Sure. The closest one by is in Athens. So that's the Meadow Branch landfill, which is a Waste Connections facility. So that's the nearest landfill. So it would be a very comparable program.
So if this was to be approved, I'm not saying it is or isn't, how would it, if any, would it affect the lifespan? Because when we chatted about the sludge or whatever it was called back when we did that, I was told that would not affect the life of the landfill. How does this new change affect one way or the other?
Sure. You know, when you talk about
The life of
as a catchy song, though.
Commissioner Thompson.
No problem. No problem.
You understand my question?
Yeah, sure do. So when we talk about life of the landfill, it's all about the number of tons that you're bringing in. Because landfills, the life is based on a permitted airspace. And so if you're bringing in more tons, that'll eat away the life of the landfill faster. So, you know, a ton of sludge contributes to a depletion of airspace and site life, just like a ton of normal waste does. Again, all of this goes with saying we have a tonnage cap here at Bradley County Landfill where we cannot go over. That's in our contract. And so we sort of have, if we were to max out up to that tonnage cap, which we currently aren't, there's sort of a maximum amount of site life depletion that could happen. So all that is to say, right now, certainly if we take 50% less sludge, that's going to increase the site life because there's 50% less tons coming in, if that makes sense. But as far as the liquid waste replacing the sludge, there's going to be no appreciable difference to site life. It's both just coming in at about the same rates.
So, thank you for that. 'Cause,
Sure.
I mean, you know, as you know, about a year or two ago, we invested in a monitoring system out there at the landfill, and from what Commissioner Hughes has reported, it seems to be going well with the reports that we're getting. In your opinion, does this affect that? Is it
No, so
necessary or not necessary, or?
what I would say to that, I'll maybe have two parts to that response. You know, I definitely, you know, wastewater treatment biosolids are absolutely known to be odoriferous, to be pungent, especially when they're coming into landfill facilities. So, you know, absolutely part of our decision here to not bring those in is because we have an obligation to run that site as a great neighbor to everyone around us and as your representatives to your constituents. And so it was important to us that we remove any opportunities for something that is maybe notably pungent waste streams. You know, the stuff that's coming in here is significantly more benign when it comes to odor. It's just going to be like a normal waste. And the other piece I think that we would, you know, love to take a little credit for with the reduction in any odors coming in is we've been making pretty significant investments in the landfill gas collection system. So we've actually doubled the scale of that system in the past year and doubled the amount of landfill gas that we extract from the facility and then destroy on site in a landfill gas flare. So that's the other piece that's really happening that's made us be so much more effective in managing any odors on site.
All right, so, I mean, the ultimate, I guess, says, I just want to know your opinion on the monitoring system would relate to this.
Oh, sure.
Judge, I want to be super clear on this piece right here. If I understood what you said just a moment ago, that should this not be approved, you never know, then your decision not to take waste or whatever it's called from Cobb County goes back into effect? Or is that, they're totally two different things? You're not going to take waste from Cobb County anymore, no matter what happens
Correct.
with respect to this resolution?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, that's right. Correct.
Last one, Mr. Chairman, Crystal, I'm glad you're here. Does this affect the contract that we've entered into them? Do we have to amend the contract, or?
Well, as far as I know, they've not requested to change the contract. The only thing you're doing, I think the state, TDEC requires your approval in order for them to move forward with this process. So all this resolution does is say that we're giving that approval and then does put in there about their agreement about the sludge from Cobb County.
So the contract doesn't have to be?
Contract, as far as I know, there's been no request to change the contract.
Okay.
And they would stay within the same tonnage that he's talking about that's currently in there, so it would not change the substance of the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Peak, and then Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How long of a public notice do you have to give?
I believe it just this resolution comes in. I don't believe there's subsequent public notice associated with the.
Okay, I thought,
Permit
I just
application.
saw on that last page where it said your requirements was a contract with a public notice and resolution approved by the commission.
Right, and I think as part of the, and you all are more familiar with the process than I am in at least the public meeting, but I think that was sort of this, and then it gets put in the agenda for approval as a resolution at your subsequent meeting, and that meets the requirements for public notice, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes?
Question on this, now, do we know, or do you know at this moment what exactly is going to be put in this liquid waste?
But we haven't started marketing it actively, but commonly the types of materials that we would target is, you know, you have a lot of off-spec products from any sort of like food manufacturing facilities, things that maybe go out of expiration, especially stuff like that. You have things that, like there could be like dredging materials that are like wet, soily type stuff that are, again, very benign that you can get mixed in there. There's some oils and greases maybe that could get put in there. So those types of materials, a lot of times you have aggregators of liquid waste who will sort of go to business for smaller companies, not really large industrial companies, but Think of a company like Safety Clean or something like that. You see those vacuum trucks around town maybe. So they'll actually go and aggregate maybe smaller amounts of liquid waste from small companies and then bring those to the facility. So it'd be those types of materials.
The reason I said that is because I was looking at the resolution, and the resolution does give approval for that, but one of my main concerns is with everything else, is that it's kind of open-ended. If you decided to add something else to that, other than that, then you can add it any time. And that's the reason I wish we had an exact list, and then if anything else came in later that may not want to come in, then we could look at it and say, no, that wasn't approved. So that's the reason I was asking the question for an exact list of what was going on.
Sure. Yeah, so, a lot like when we talk about MSW, which is municipal solid waste, there's just such an incredible breadth of different generators here just locally that being able to really specify every single one of those would be almost impossible. What I would say, though, is just like we do with special wastes that come into the landfill, special dry wastes, there's a very robust approvals process through TDEC that says very clearly you have to profile it, you have to have analytical, they have to agree that it's safe and responsible. And so there is sort of a check and balance there with the regulatory agency, certainly, for every single one of these liquid waste that would be coming in.
I guess to answer my question, or you answered my question, but a question towards that is you're doing advertising for it, correctly?
No, currently we're not.
You're going to be looking for certain companies that will supply this. You do know the certain companies that you're going to be targeting. With that, you can kind of guess at what's going to be coming in. That's the reason I said that you should be able to supply something that's pretty close to what you got, or wanting to come in anyway.
Again, I really, right now we're such a preliminary part of this, trying not to get out ahead of our skis too much. Wanted to make sure we cross this important item off first, this important stepping stone. Certainly, I'm happy to circle back with some more information if that would be helpful on specifics. But we have not actively gone in. It's one of those types of things where we know that the market exists here because there's competitors and other folks in the marketplace that are actively doing the same thing. And so we know that market exists, but as far as specifics, I apologize, but I just don't have any at this time.
Last question, have you ever been given a blank check?
No.
That's what this resolution is, a blank check for you to do whatever you want to do with it. That's the reason I was wanting to ask, what do you think is coming in? It's because I want to be able to go to my constituents and say, this is what we were told, this is what was approved. That's what happened with the sludge. We were told, but never did know. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Commissioner Epperson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Hughes asked one of my questions, what kind of liquids that was, and then I understand what you're talking about when TDEC regulates all those kind of liquids. And then you're only allowed to accept those kind of liquids that fall under that parameter.
Right.
So I understand what you're talking about, but we do appreciate, and I do want to say, the first district does appreciate the sludge being stopped, and that's good news for the first district. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Crowley. Commissioner Slater?
Yes, Republic does not own the landfill in Athens. Is that the correct statement?
That's correct.
I travel that road frequently, about 3/4 of a mile before I get to it, and about a mile past it. The stench is terrible. Do they take sludge into your knowledge?
They do. Yeah, they have the contract for all of the city of Knoxville sludge comes down there.
So they have the same system that you're proposing, but they still take sludge in?
Correct. I think there's a lot of reasons why those odors are happening, certainly. Certainly sludge could be one of them.
Well, I'm not here to determine what's causing sludge. I just wanted to verify if they were taking it or not taking it, because you said they had the same system that you are proposing. And that's the basis of my question. The next is, how frequent does the state of Tennessee inspect this?
State of Tennessee comes out to Bradley County landfill on random once every single month.
But they do every 30 days, give or take.
Yep, every calendar month they're out.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Slade?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the removal of the Cobb County Sutton's sludge coming into the landfill as of March the 1st, are you taking any other sludge from any other companies?
We do take some sludge from Cleveland Utilities, so they have a wastewater treatment system as well. There may be some very other extremely minute from local industries, but as far as like municipal wastewater treatment sludge, no, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And Mr. Rayburn and Mr. Peak?
Yes, sir. I'd first begin by saying thank you for making those changes. I know those people out there deserve better, and it sounds like that we're heading in the right direction. Next thing is this, and it was just answered, I'm going to ask it just slightly different, about the sludge business. Do you know if, other than Cleveland Utilities, are we taking any from the surrounding counties? I'll just sort of leave it at that for right now. I've got one more question.
So there's sometimes, not as a recurring customer, so certainly sometimes a one-off load would come in possibly, but no, primarily the only other, we had really two sources. One was a giant source of sludge, which was from Cobb County. We certainly have the Cleveland Utilities, but otherwise, no. And that's mostly a market dynamics where there's other landfills regionally that are just closer and able to accept those materials rather than here at Bradley County.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And one more question. Mr. Cry alluded to it just a second ago, but I was actually talking to the mayor of Benton County last week, and he was talking about the odor is still a really big problem there, and I know the several residents in that area that it continues to be. So if you could keep that in mind as far as making comparisons, that it almost is a negative comparison because of the people in that area are not very pleased at all.
Sure, yeah, understood.
Thank you.
Commissioner Peak, Commissioner Goins, and then Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your solidifying tanks will be on, you don't have solidifying tanks currently, so you have to put those in. And that's what will solidify the waste that you'll be taking in.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And the criteria, you're saying anything that comes in there will have to go through the analytical criteria, so it'll have to be sent to lab tested, and then you'll have certain criteria for what you'll take and what you will not take.
Yep.
So that's probably what would help us a lot if we had a list of what those analyticals are. Not that we know what we're talking about when we look at a lab analytical, but it might help somebody out there and kind of give us a basis for what you will be taking in.
Sure, I can certainly, maybe the easiest thing to do is to follow up with kind of what our approval criteria is and what that looks like of how we judge any special waste that's coming in and go that way. Again, it's maybe a little more general, but I'm certainly happy to provide that information, definitely. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Goins.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know it says Cobb County, just, you know, I mean, I personally think it would be better if it just said any other county. I mean, you know, that way it would be more clear. Because, you know, you could add Fulton County or Atlanta. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Winters?
Could you walk us through the liquid consolidation process? Once you pick it up, walk us through what you do.
Sure. Again, not to oversimplify it, relatively straightforward. So we usually have some pits dug. So within the lined footprint of the landfill itself, we'll excavate some specific areas, we call them pits, and line those either with a roll-off box or something else that sort of contains the material. Liquid waste will come in and we'll have the dry bulking material sitting there just immediately adjacent to it. We'll use an excavator just to put that material into the pits and literally just mix it kind of manually with an excavator bucket until it gets to a consistency that we can pull it out and then put it in one of our on-site haul trucks and then just take it right to the active face of the landfill and dump it right in there with the rest of the common trash. Sure.
Commissioner Black?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, real quick, I should have asked you this a few moments ago, but the clients or the customers that you're gonna be accepting this solid, are you gonna enter into contracts or agreements with them? Or is it just as they have a need, they'll send it over to you? I just wonder what kind of arrangements you'll have with your potential customers.
Sure. It'll be really similar to how our arrangements we have with all of our existing customers. This is really, think of it like a special waste. So in landfill terms and solid waste terms, there's MSW, which is just common trash, municipal solid waste that's like picked up from households. There's C&D waste, which is construction and demolition waste. It's just like inert rubble, that type of stuff. And there's special waste, which don't really fall into any of those categories and require a higher degree of analysis and sort of process control around them. So these liquid wastes are going to be effectively exactly like that, depending on, sometimes we have one-offs, sometimes we have businesses that are just going to come in. Maybe they have random loads. Again, there might be aggregators of this material, but possibly if there's a larger generator of liquid waste, especially locally, we would absolutely enter into a contract with them and kind of figure out, obviously if they bring us more waste, we could have a more favorable rate structure.
That's what I was getting at,
Yeah.
the price point is,
Sure.
with your contracts, you would have that in your terms.
Yeah.
But so, some of them you may have a contract with and some of them you may not with.
Sure, but
That's what I'm hearing.
that's right. Yeah, sometimes we don't have formal contract agreements with customers. They're allowed to come in, but this is a much more controlled process. So if we don't have contracts, we will absolutely have special waste profiles that have gone through that analysis process, been through TDEC, been reviewed by all areas of both organizations. So that's sort of the process control piece as opposed to a contract that we have with them.
And you're doing this to quote-unquote make up for the 50% anticipated reduction because you're no longer taking sludge from Cobb County.
That's correct. That's our primary reason for sort of looking at this.
So we have no expectations that there's going to be any additional revenue or anything like that?
I mean, we certainly hope that it's a very successful program.
Sure.
We've done some internal pro formas to look at it, and really our top expectation is that we match that revenue. It's very possible that we won't, probably even likely, as we're getting the program off the ground. It's probably going to take months to get ramped up and sort of help make sure local businesses understand that this opportunity exists for them. But yeah, so our goal is to replace that revenue, but it's very possible that we won't completely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, I'm glad to hear that the sludge is going away. As environmental officer of Bradley County, when I was standing down on AP 40, and when a truck goes by me and I about drop to my knees from the stench of the truck that's going in their landfill, that's a problem. And I'm glad to hear that's going away, and I won't ever be for that to come back. So just tell you where I stand. Another thing too, I've had a lot of constituents call about your fees. Went away from cash and cut for folks. I know a lot of things are going to cards, but still a lot of constituents have cash. Can you speak on that?
Sure. We sort of did a new point of sale system at the Citizen Convenience Center, which I'm assuming is where the focus is. It's just a single person out there managing that whole facility, and so from just a safety and sort of process control, not handling cash like that, especially when on Saturdays we have so many individual folks, families coming through there. The ability to sort of provide a great service for everyone using our facility is certainly expedited. Again, safer, more reliable from a business not handling cash perspective. And that's why we did it. Fees weren't increased with that. It was more just a process control. Now I know, and we've had a lot of really favorable comments back from folks as well. A lot of people appreciate not really having to have that cash interaction. What I will say to that though is we've listened and understand that was a point of concern for a few folks, and so we have resumed taking cash at the Citizen Convenience Center. We don't really broadcast that, but if folks just don't have any ability to, we tried to work through a lot of things, but really we want to serve the people who need to use the facility, and so that's really our ultimate goal, and we have actually gone back to doing that now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Mr. Hughes?
This, I swear, will be my last question.
No problem.
You've told several times I've heard that this would just be for local companies. Is that correct, or will you be looking outside or Chattanooga, what have you, or will it literally just be Bradley County?
I mean, certainly the Chattanooga marketplace will be a target for those waste materials and for the revenue. So I say that where, liquid waste is hard to haul. There's other landfills in the area that have similar programs. There's other non-landfills that have similar programs, admittedly. And so it's really not like, we don't anticipate material is going to be coming from long distances because they will have to drive by other facilities that do kind of the exact same thing. So when I say local, I mean not just Bradley County, not just Cleveland, but really sort of the local marketplace. So that's what I mean.
So in other words, there's nothing will be coming from Atlanta or outside of the state?
We've looked at Atlanta as, okay, is this somewhere that we can bring material up from? Are there other types of wet waste that isn't sludge? Customers possibly in Atlanta or other places that don't have the same negative impact but still have the same revenue upside for both of us here. And again, the market just doesn't exist, which is why we're sort of doing this strategy, which is a more diverse, rather than have like one big customer. We're expecting to have maybe 15 to 20 smaller to medium-sized customers. There's a lot of solidification that happens in Atlanta, including at some Republic facilities. So yeah, we definitely do not expect to be getting significant amounts of liquid materials from the Atlanta market.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Commissioner Epperson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a few questions. I wanted to see if, you mentioned something about Cleveland Utilities, and you are accepting some sludge from them still at this time. And then the other question is, I hear that the Cleveland Utilities is really good about the grade and the process of how they treat their sludge prior to bringing it to a landfill. Is there certain grades in the sludge versus their sludge versus Cobb County's?
It's more of a quantity situation. So it used to be that there was something called undigested sludge, which was the stuff that really smelled sort of like raw sewage. There's now a law in Tennessee that no undigested sludge can be disposed at landfills, so it goes through what's like a subsequent processing step at wastewater treatment plants. So as far as like the quality of the material, I'd say it's effectively all very similar, but it's more of a quantity of material that's there. Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing is that sometimes they usually put it out on farmland.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they definitely land apply it as well. I think there's land application of sludge is certainly a common. The city of Chattanooga does land application of their sludge. So again, we take not a significant amount of this material for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more question.
Sure.
The price point between the sludge and the new material that you'll be taking is what?
Excuse me, the cross point?
The price point.
Price point. The new material coming in will probably be about a 30 to 40% higher than the sludge that we were getting before. Again, we'll take a smaller quantity of this material, so we expect that's how we'll kind of make up the difference. There certainly was a transportation cost associated with bringing that material up from Atlanta, which was something that Santec and then Republic was paying for in order to get that material here. So that's really where the big difference comes in.
Mr. Owens?
I was just gonna say, I like to see y'all work out a deal with the city instead of taking it to the exchange station over on Blue Springs Road. Because the city takes their garbage to Athens. And, I'm just saying that's revenue, and that's in my district also. And that would be good to, just consider something like that.
And we absolutely, as soon as that contract comes back out for bid, we 100% are interested in taking that material. Unfortunately, previously we lost that opportunity. And so, but absolutely. And, one of the other things I think is exciting is there's a lot of, that transfer station has been closed in some cases because it's gotten so full because of the difficulties getting in and out of the facility in Athens. And we know that a lot of smaller, well, we call them mom and pops, but smaller local businesses have chosen not to come to Bradley County Landfill because they didn't really want to interact with the sludge, right? Everyone has to like be around the material. So we're sort of excited to have more of those sort of small local contractors and businesses now be coming back to the facility because they just don't have to interact with something that's so off-putting as this sludge was.
You don't know when that contract's up, do you?
I do not off the top of my head, yeah.
Mayor's here.
Mayor's Recognize Mayor Brooks.
We can find out. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for going through the gauntlet of questions. And
You bet.
we're trying to, just looking out for, previous things that have happened there, so.
Totally understand. But looking forward to working with you, obviously, either way. I think Mayor Davis and those of you who are in the district have hopefully seen a significant improvement of how the facility has operated, odors and everything else since Republic has taken over. So we just look forward to continuing doing that. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. To my surprise, it's been great to work with Republic, and I think we need to remember that two things. You get your cash back, those of you who had a big problem with that, and I never would have thought we'd be able to say we wouldn't be taking the sludge. And mind you, the sludge is legal, it's permitted. We couldn't go to them and say, you can't take sludge anymore because there was no way we could prohibit it. So we tried to get to that point other ways, and I think we've gotten there. So that's the good news. No, the large amounts of sludge are gone. But the solidification process is something that they would like to be approved. The state just requires commission approval before they go ahead with their permit, and that way they can replace the revenue loss, Mylan, but not the tonnage. You know, I did the math on it. It's less tonnage, but probably more revenue. So that extends the life of the landfill in essence. So thank you all. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thanks, sir.
Let me say one more thing, please. I'm going to bring him in as recognizing him you already have. But Mayor Brooks is here today. I think he wanted to come and learn more about landfills in case the city of Cleveland wanted to go into landfill business. I remember the day when they told us they no longer wanted to be in the landfill business. So, but welcome, Mayor Brooks. We appreciate you being here. And as soon as that contract is up, I have no doubt he's going to be looking to come back to Bradley County because right now they're part of that stinking sludge in Athens and they don't like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Reports from committees and districts. We'll start to my left, Commissioner Winters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This past week, several members of the commission had an opportunity to meet with the Agricultural Board, with the new director, Hannah Goodson, and her team in the Pie Center. So we were invited there to come to the Pie Center and sit in to the new facility that our agricultural center, with our students will be in that building with all the other students doing other things vocationally in the future. It was a great luncheon, and we got to meet all the young administrators that will be working with Hannah. So, as you know, Mr. Thomas is now running the entire region. He will be stepping in for a little while since Ms. Goodson is expecting her second or third child, first child. So she'll be prophetic here. But it was a great meeting. It was just really a lot of energy. They meet with it right at 3,000 students in this year. They've done that. So congratulations to them. But it was a lot of energy, a lot of reports, and we're proud that they're here. I'll defer to you. Also, our juvenile committee will meet tomorrow at noon at the juvenile center. It'll be a good time to get together and look at the future budget concerns as well as catch up with what's going on. We have not had many meetings through the pandemic, for obvious reasons, that what's going on in the facility. We're looking forward to that meeting tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. Commissioner Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to mention one thing to the public is this. Right now on the education reform bill, all you're hearing is positive, and I'm not so sure that as you begin examining that and looking into that, that it's quite so positive as we're being led to believe. So, I'm just asking not only commissioners, but the public, do your homework and see what all is entailed in that new reform bill. And in my opinion, it's more of a Band-Aid than it is a long-term fix. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rackman. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All is well on the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. Everything's well on the 6th. Also, the road committee, called a meeting for this Wednesday at 11 a.m. here in the commission room. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Slater.
All's well in the 5th today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Goins.
Fifth district's looking well.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I see a lot of citizens here from the 4th District this morning, and I'm glad you're here, because this is a work session. And I got a call last night that this issue was a done deal. It's not a done deal until after the voting session next week. And I'm glad you're here where you can either express your support or your opposition to the issue. And we'll be glad to hear from you today. And I'm glad you're here when we can hear it. It helps us make our decisions. So anyway, I just want you to know that you can express your feelings today, and it will be voted on next Monday meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Dr. Case, Director of Schools, for being present. It's always good to have the school system represented. The second district is doing fine, thanks to Commissioner Mason for picking up all the tires. My daughter came out of the food line Friday evening and experienced a sight that's unbelievable. By one of those trees out in the parking lot, a tire dump. Somebody had came by and dumped a stack of tires inside the city, and that's such a prominent place. It's getting to the point of being ridiculous in this tire stuff. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know some of you commissioners are interested in the impact bill that is going through right now at the state of Tennessee. There will be one more hearing on that tomorrow afternoon, and we hope that it will be defeated. Otherwise, that could lead to commissioners in every county being able to impose impact fees as much as they wanted to. It would gut the current County Power Relief Act, which would give counties or citizens, it would give citizens no way to oppose impact fees. It would give the county commissions the ability to do whatever they wanted in imposing those fees. So hopefully that will be defeated tomorrow, and there will be no more impact on building in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All's well in the 3rd.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Offer.
Yes, second district's doing well, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, as Commissioner Winters had spoke, we had an ag committee last week, a meeting at the Pie Center. Ms. Godson is here if she wants to speak on any of that. No? Otherwise, I have nothing.
Okay. Oh, she's coming.
Oh, she's coming.
So I'll give a little update because I just left the Pie Center again. We are looking to move in as soon as possible, as soon as internet and phone get put in. Pie Center looks good, furniture's in, CO was granted last week, and so everything's looking good. Extension's excited for us to be in there. I had UT down this morning to look at our internet, look at those lines and such like that. So we are really excited. We're planning a lot of our summer events in there with those big rooms and classrooms. A lot of our Master Gardener programs, youth development programs will be held in there, hopefully starting this summer. So thank you for the support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Hughes?
I have nothing else.
Okay. Commissioner Everson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that we had a good productive meetings up there in Nashville, basically dealing with the two bills that Commissioner Pickett just spoke about. The County Powers Relief Act was introduced in 2006, and basically that gives the ability of a county to impose an impact fee on all new homes. We worked really hard on those triggers. There's our triggers within that bill, and those triggers have to be met before a county can impose those fees. The county that is currently wanting to impose that fee, it wants to change the triggers within the County Powers Relief Act, is looking at like $9 a square feet. So if you do the math on a 2,000 square feet average size home here in Bradley County, we're looking at $18,000 plus about a $1,500 building permit right from the very get-go. So it's important that with housing being 12 to 13 cents of every dollar that's out there, and that's huge in our economy. We are working hard to try to make sure that those triggers stay within that County Powers Relief Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Blake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, real quick, when she just said they were going to the Pine Center, that's a little bit faster than I thought. What is the long-term plan for the building over on Church Street that they're gonna be leaving?
There isn't one. We've been waiting on a date to know for sure when they'll be out, and now it's very soon, so the building and, yeah, he's gonna talk about it. The Building and Land Committee will be asked to look at it at some point.
Oh, okay. So we don't know. But that whole bottom floor now is empty.
Will be, it's not now. If he's, would it be okay to respectfully request someone to put the resolution that we've been discussing on the agenda?
Yes, I would be glad to put it on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Is that it, Commissioner Jefferson?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, moving into the agenda, item A, Commissioner Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, this is a resolution to rezone from FAR, Forest Agricultural Residential District, to I-1 General Industrial District, property located at Walker Boulevard and Dillard Road Northwest, identified by tax map 10, parcel 14. And you can see those on page 3 and 4. That was recommended by the Planning Commission for approval.
Any discussion on this, Commissioner? I believe this is right in the middle of the industrial area, correct? Being no discussion, we'll move into item B, Commissioner Hughes.
This is a resolution to rezone from FAR to C1 rural, and C1 rural commercial district to R2 high density residential district. Property located at 5396 Bates Pike, identified by tax map 67, parcel 46. Those can be seen on page 5 through 6. It did meet the requirements for the approval of the rezoning, and the Planning Commission did vote to approve that.
Any questions, Commissioners, concerning this particular site? That's located along Kinzer and Bates Pike, correct? Commissioner Slater?
Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
And there were no issues that came out of the planning commission regarding the road or anything, road around that area or anything?
The only thing we looked at was the zoning itself. The requirements for the zoning was met. However, until there's a pre-plan sent to zoning or to Bentley's office, we have no clue what's going to go there. And at that time will be the point where we start looking at traffic studies and things of that nature.
So there's still been nothing sent to Bentley's office?
No drawings of any type has been sent to it.
Commissioner Blake, I'm sorry.
And preliminary plats don't get sent until someone is going to develop the property. So right now it's rezoning, then they do preliminary plats after it's sold or something's gonna go on it. Just to clarify.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Go ahead. And also I'd like to add to that preliminary, normally that's the course that it's taken. And for a plot this size, preliminary plat would probably run into the network of probably $30,000 to $50,000 for a preliminary plat prepared for this site. So, and then it's normal that the rezoning request happens first prior to the preliminary plat. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Commissioner Rivers.
Why would we not know what's going in there prior to final agreements? Final agreements are already been made, that the owner sell and the builder can build, and we really don't know what's gonna go in there yet, correct? Is there a way of knowing what's gonna go in before it's already decided? That's my question.
Commissioner Hughes, will you explain how that process goes with the planning commission?
The property owner is actually requesting the rezoning. I don't know that they're planning on putting anything on the property. I don't know that anything will ever go on the property. Until the plan is presented to us in planning, you don't know. So it's, the only thing the property owner is doing is requesting for the rezoning of the property for possibly future. Now, that future could be 20 years from now, it could be 10 years from now, we don't know. So
And then at that point, they
At
would
that
come
point,
back
we would
with
point, yes.
with the plan to the planning commission stating this
That's
is what
correct.
That's correct. Yes, Commissioner Wayne.
And then what happens there with the question that Commissioner Slater just asked, regarding roads and regarding school and regarding all the infrastructure that we will be responsible to deal with? When does that come?
that will start once whoever brings the plan in for the development. That's where Bentley steps in and starts doing his studies on how it's gonna affect schools and so, traffic, so.
Mr. Thomas, come up and kind of explain that process. You know, you look at the impact, et cetera. Explain that.
Yes, typically we don't have, the rezoning's done first before the engineering, the preliminary plating's done and all that. If the planning commission feels like a traffic study needs to be done by the developer prior to us approving that, we have that right to request that.
So all those variables are looked at?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Commissioner Wayne.
I have to believe that someone somewhere has some idea as to what's gonna be built on these two pieces of property, or all these citizens wouldn't be sitting out here today. Yes.
The property owners are here, and they put in the request that it's a subdivision with townhomes. It's on the illustration there.
And there's still nothing that has to be done in regards to roads or infrastructure, knowing that it's going to be townhomes.
Not at this point, no.
Mr. Slater, hold on just a minute, Mr. Hughes. We can just go ahead with item C, because these are kind of attached. And go ahead and say that, and then we'll entertain some conversation with the people in office.
Mr. Chairman, it's a resolution to rezone from FAR district to R2 high-density residential district property located at 5510 Bates Pike and identified by tax map 75, parcel 75. You can see those on pages 7 and 8. And again, this was another one that was recommended by the planning commission for approval.
Okay. So now we have these two pieces of property, okay? So, and it's that's the same process that they would go through, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Thomas, can I go ahead and read it out?
Yeah, you sure can.
Mr. Stepp, would you like to, I've seen your hand raised, you gonna come forward?
Yeah, I'd like to these other folks and tell you their concerns, and then I'd like to be able to address those.
Can you come on up to the front here and talk?
He said he wants to wait till they all.
Hayes wants to wait. Mr. Chairman.
He would prefer to wait, that's what they refer. Mr. Strapp, that's fine, you can wait until the other people come
Okay.
up, and then you can answer those questions, that'll be fine. Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, I think a lot of the issue is that it's not that anyone really knows what's going on the property, it's just what the actual zone will approve. And the townhomes is just part of the zoning that's, if you go to R2, you can have townhomes and high-density residential.
Yes.
It is meant for single dwelling homes though, with property owners, buying property and so on. So that is, I think is where people are coming from with saying it, because this zoning actually allows for, trailer parks and so on. I think that, Bentley is looking at doing a separate zoning issue to kind of remove some of this, to limit the amount of what people can see as far as the approval for it. And, but I think that's really where it's coming from, is people see the high density and then townhomes mentioned, they just assume that's what it's gonna be full of, and there's no way of knowing that. It's just, that's part of the zoning, so.
I understand. Any other commissioner have anything to say before I call on a few people to come up to speak with their concerns, and we can have some, this is a good time, this is a work session, so we might as well, discuss everything. Mr. Wayne?
I think we all agree that it's the owner's right to sell his or her property. But we, as representatives of the whole community, are really concerned about the infrastructure. If there is such a facility put together that requires, so we all look at it as quickly as we can. So these questions are against an owner that's been very good to the community, that's given property to the school system there, and also been a good online citizen. So we're not at all questioning that right of ownership. We want to look at what our responsibility may be in that procedure. So that's
absolutely. Mr. Black?
Thank you. I probably need Bentley real quick, to bring him up 100 times.
Kind of hanging out in front of me, like, probably.
So, hey, Bentley, Commissioner Hughes said it is currently zone FAR.
Yes.
And the request is to go to R2.
Yes.
Right. So we've talked a lot about R2 and what that entails. Zoning 101, what is FAR? So if the zoning request was denied, they would obviously stay FAR. What is that?
But sir, there, right now, currently, they could do single-family homes or duplexes on 7,500 square foot lots. But the zoning change to R2 would allow them to do townhomes as well.
So townhomes is the big deal with
Yes.
R2, right? On that. So, thanks. Crystal, let me ask you this, when we take up this motion next week, are we allowed to put any contingencies on it?
Nope.
So as this,
You
as
approve
it's,
it, you
as it's
approve it.
presented.
Yes.
And if it was denied, what legal recourse, I'm not saying you're his attorney, but just from our side, he's well within his legal rights to ask for R2, and if we were denied, he would be able to take us to court or take somebody.
Yeah, certainly, someone can. The standard that you all have to make sure you comply with is that you have to not act arbitrarily or capriciously in your decision-making. So, whenever that's the purpose of the public hearing and the fact that you have a hearing where you consider all the information, so.
So if we were to deny R2, we have to have a pretty good reason why we would deny it.
You have to not act arbitrarily or capriciously. If it is challenged, though, what a landowner would have to do is say that you all had acted arbitrarily and capriciously and say why.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Peake?
So in the FAR, Bentley, they can currently do chicken houses, pig farms, and then per 7,500 square foot of a lot, they could do houses or duplexes, and the duplexes could be rental.
With SERV, yes.
With
which is
server,
a-
okay.
Yes.
But they couldn't sell the duplexes individually as a door, as a
No,
single
that's what-
family. It would
that's-
be apartments if they did it on FAR.
It would have to be together, yeah, you couldn't cut it down the lot line.
Okay. And the owner, though, we can't put contingencies on it, but the owner can put restrictions on his property prior to his voting, if he wished.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peake. Okay. Any other commissioners want to say? You may want to say something after we hear from some people that,
Chairman,
yes, Mr. Roth.
after listening to Mr. Williams, is it?
Williams.
Last week, is that property already been sold?
It's under contract to be sold based on if it gets approved for rezon.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson, you'll come up. I'm gonna recognize you to come up and,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know if you all need
You can pass
pictures.
yours out if you want to.
Okay, I don't think all of you need it.
Some of you weren't here. I don't think you were here tonight for that.
Yeah, I still have it.
Some of y'all. This is just to help show you kind of what changing the zoning. This is the most recent R2 development in Cleveland. So kind of similar to what you see there.
Let's see if I can get this. Last time people said they couldn't hear me. First of all, thank you for listening to me again today and giving me an opportunity to talk here. Of course, I've come up to talk about the same rezoning that we spoke about last time. I tried to write down my thoughts this time so I don't blunder on y'all too much. But after the last rezoning meeting, I did call Joe Stepp the next day. We had a good conversation. I told him that I voted, spoke against it and why I voted against it. A couple of things that came out of that. I took Mr. Thompson's advice and I offered to buy the farm from Joe Stepp. If it doesn't get rezoned or if it doesn't go through, I offered to buy it. The other thing that came out of it, that Joe said that he didn't really understand what R2 would allow when he asked for it. So that's a little frustrating, but it's his land and do what he wants to with it. But I just think it goes to show kind of how some of this is a little backwards, it feels like, that we'll rezone it before we know what's coming. We can know with a pretty good amount of certainty, though, that if this zoning change is approved, the track will be developed either wholly or partially the way that you're looking at it on those pictures. And the reason that we can do that is that the person buying it has already done the math. They know that the current zoning does not allow them to get enough doors. So that's why they're asking for the rezoning. That's why they've put the contingency in the contract, that it has to be rezoned. And any developer acting prudently will sit down, run the numbers, see how many doors they can get, and then that is how you determine what price you can pay the farmer or the person for their land. You have to back into it. You don't do that and then figure it out on the other end. So the only reason to get it rezoned from what it currently is to R2 is to do what you see, at least impartial or the whole thing. But the problem is that we don't know what they're doing. So you have to assume that they've requested the R2 for a reason. It's density. So just for reference, under its current zoning, you could get 755 doors approximately on that land. You could put that many new houses on 150 acres, approximately. That's about 4 to 5 houses an acre. By changing it to R2, these numbers are a little low. You can get 1,510 townhomes or 1,963 apartments by changing the zoning, by simply doing that, nothing else. So that is a concern, of course, of mine and I think my neighbors. There's a couple of things I keep hearing from different commissioners and things, and I have this on here and I just want to bring it up, and thankfully the county attorney is here today that I spoke to about this a couple weeks ago, and I keep hearing this thing that if it's not illegal you can't really vote no, but then thankfully you already said what the commissioners have to base theirs on is capricious and arbitrary, which I don't say it as well as she does, but so I'd like to address a few reasons why this zoning change would be both arbitrary and capricious, in my opinion. The school. At the last meeting, we heard from the school person that was there. The school can take a total of 300 children. There's currently 3 classrooms empty, giving a total of maybe 75 to 100 kids at most it could take. Of course, as you hear those numbers of 1,500 to almost 2,000 new doors, the school can't handle that. The roads on Kinzer, Bates Pike, and Osment are currently not wide enough for 2 service trucks to safely pass each other. This includes fire trucks, ambulances, delivery, and utility trucks. There have already been accidents on Kinzer Road with fire trucks and utility vehicles. Current and past firemen that I've talked to at the station on Bates Pike that this abuts to, described the experience of passing another large vehicle as gripping the steering wheel and waiting for impact. That's how small the roads are at the current state. These roads cannot support a development like this. My opinion for the zoning is that I'm not against development in Bradley County. We would like for that development to be done in a responsible manner, though. There is currently no similar zoning anywhere around this tract in question. The closest R2 zoning is miles away. To rezone this property to R2 would lead to irresponsible and randomized community development, in my opinion. I believe that the city should be grown from the inside out rather than random pockets of high-density, multi-family neighborhoods intermittently dispersed throughout rural areas. If the zoning change is approved, I fear this will set a dangerous precedent for similar developments from investors outside of Bradley County that could really care less what the county looks like in 10 to 20 years. And to go a step further on this fear of voting no, if it's not legal, you can't vote. I spoke to the county attorney, and if anyone ever on this vote or any vote, this is something that my family wants to do I'm tired of hearing it, is that we will cover any legal expense that the county incurs. The way this would work is that the county will fight for you, and then I will make a donation to the county earmarked for that. But no one should be voting based, in my opinion, on whether it's legal or it's not. The voters did not put you all in office to vote out of fear, but rather what's best for the county. And I will stand next to you for that, with you and with my wallet. Your constituents voted you into office because they believed that you would make decisions on their behalf that would reflect the best interest of them and the county. It is entirely within your power to promote responsible community development by voting no to this zoning change. Today, I've outlined several reasons why this zoning change is not reasonable in terms of safety, practicality, and responsible community development. You also have many rational, logical, and valid reasons to vote no to this zoning change, or at least require a traffic study to be done at a minimum, like Bentley said. I mean, just something rather than just zoning 150 acres R2 and not knowing what's going to happen. So that's all I really have, but if anybody has any questions, as I said before, I'm a commercial real estate appraiser. This is what I do for a living. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
So what if it was zoned R1 instead of R2? What would that do to the property?
It really doesn't change much. They could do about 800 houses, 750 to 800 houses the way it is now.
R1's actually more restricted than the FAR.
Yeah, he can do a lot more with it the way it is now than he could even if it was a FAR.
You stated, I know the pictures that you sent up here, they're misleading.
I don't think they are.
If you'll let me comment first. So we've got plenty in the city right now, specifically down North Lee Highway that was just developed. It's mixed use. We don't have PUDs in the county. So R2 is how they would get to a PUD. In that PUD, and I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here. These pictures are totally misleading because in a mixed use development, like Tom Cake's subdivision is beautiful. He's got beautiful townhouses in the front, and then he's got, where Mayor Brooks lives, right behind it, a beautiful housing development. So the pictures are misleading that you brought, number one. On the schools, I know that people count doors and they think it's ×2, but the census, the national census, says it's 0.80 per door in our area, so you would average that over time. And what we could get right now is 871 homes or duplexes on FAR. So what else did I hear that I wanted to bring out? Mainly that. I don't like the misleading part of it. We all agree that the roads have to be looked at, number one. We all agree with that, for sure. and then the schools. But then you gotta count how many houses are gonna go in there if it's approved and houses go in there, or townhomes go in there. How much tax dollar we're gonna get off that? And then are we going, that's what you gotta understand, are we going to fix the schools and the roads for this area to be able to handle this infrastructure that we're going to vote on? That's what we really need to look at. With the tax dollars, are we gonna do that? Are we gonna fix Taylor School to be able to handle this? And are we gonna fix the roads surrounding it? And will our fire department be able to handle it as well? We've gotta look at all of that.
So I disagree with that. I mean, both, the pictures you have are R2 developments. That's what they're zoned.
Not all R2s are like that though. That's what I'm saying. It's
But you
misleading.
can't,
It's
you're right that the developer doesn't have to, and that's where I said you have to assume the worst case. You can't go in and say, it's Tom Kate developing it, and he's here, standing here saying, I'm gonna do it just like North Lee. This is an out-of-town investor that no one here really knows that well, and we have to assume from his previous that I've appraised things, it's not Tom Kate.
And do yours look all like this also?
What, all my what?
When you develop, do you make sure yours are?
I tore down car
pristine,
washes
or
and
they
built
look
strip
like
centers that looked pretty nice, I think. I
that?
tried
I'm
to
just saying,
be,
beauty is in the eye of the beholder, is what I'm saying.
well, sure, and for
So
him,
that's
I'm
the
sure
only
it's
thing I didn't
dollar.
like about
it's-
the presentation.
I understand. So let's take your census though. Okay, point 8. At townhomes, that's 1,510 homes.
I don't know where you got your numbers for your townhomes. but
It's
our
an
math isn't
average
working.
of 8 to 10 doors when that's how many you can fit on typical R2 land. That's where I got it from.
Per acre?
Per acre. And there's 150 acres.
And where did you get your information? Because we just got some from Bentley and it's not matching.
I'm sorry, what
Where
information?
did you get your information on how many doors per acre?
Asking about 5 different developers that just did it, what I could do it for. You know, how many, my question to them was, look, if you have R2 zoning with water and sewer, what's an average? Don't give me specific, just what's an average? And so I asked them, what can you do houses for? How many townhomes and how many apartments? Because I wanted to understand what could be built there. I'm not saying that's what's going to be built.
Okay,
I
but
hope
in the eye
not.
of the beholder, basically what you're up here telling us is the same thing I just said. We've got to look at the roads, the schools, the infrastructure around it, and the fire department, and what it's gonna do. As far as what's built on it, we can't be a judge. I can't go next door to a guy that's gonna build a house and tell him I don't like the look of his house.
Right, but that's why
So when it comes to appearances, we can't even fathom that.
The zoning,
That would be
though-
arbitrary, in my opinion, for us to even consider what it's gonna look like. So, that's why I was saying, I don't like the picture part of it, but
And
I
we-
do agree with you. These are all the aspects that we've got to look at.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Commissioner Roth?
Bill, is it possible before we vote on this or delay this vote that we can get a traffic and a school study before we actually have any idea what we're voting on?
Who's gonna pay for it?
Somebody mentioned it earlier that you could do something like that. I didn't know what we're talking about.
How much money are we talking about?
No idea, whatever we.
Look, I'm happy to front some money to help make sure that it's responsible development. It's not even my land. And I'll throw money at it to make sure that it's responsible development.
I mean, I can imagine asking a developer that hasn't even bought the property yet to do a traffic study now. I mean, it would have to be the county funding it.
Oh, so the developer is the one who does the study. Is that what
Typically,
you're telling me?
if they submit plans to the planning commission and the planning commission feels like a traffic study's needed, they'll hold it up, request that study from the developer once he's purchased the property, but not at this point.
Well, could it be sent back to planning to request that?
Well, it hasn't been sold to the developer yet. It's still owned by the,
Just a matter of time.
this,
But it's requested for R2. Doesn't matter if the developer requested or the owner, right?
Yes. Where we're hearing a request from the owner.
But we're here for the rezoning, so it doesn't really matter who owns it. The question is the rezoning the right thing?
Thank you, Commissioner Epperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out, like I spoke earlier about the preliminary plat. Preliminary plat too, the preliminary plat is subject to change. Just like if someone with a developer would come in here and tell you exactly what he planned on putting on that planned development. When all the engineers and all the stormwater and everything gets looked at, throwing numbers out like you're throwing out is misleading a little bit, because it depends on the wetlands, how much blue line streams are on the property. It will play into how many detention ponds that are required, and for the planning commission or for Bentley to move forward on it, he needs to have something that it shows exactly what this developer would like to move forward with. All this going on, to me, I think it's premature.
Well, I think it goes back to what we talked about last time. It does feel a little backwards, because once you get it rezoned, you're not going back to FAR. It's going to be R2.
And also, I would add too that normally when sewer comes into play, it's common that lands get rezoned to R2 high density. It's common within areas that have sewer. And this area just obtained sewer.
Yes, sir, I understand. Usually it's around zoning that is comparable. R2 doesn't just go out by itself. You'll have another R2 or something, typically is what I see, but you're right. Once it gets sewer, you've just increased the value of the property and potential.
The dynamics happen.
Yes, sir.
Sewer comes into play.
Yes, sir.
But it uses the land wisely, smart growth.
Would be great. The fear is that they won't.
Mr. Robinson, I appreciate your time, and you're obviously passionate about this and on your views, and I appreciate that. Is there someone else that would want to speak? Yes. If you'll state your name up here, because you haven't been up here before, even though I know you.
My name is Pamela Owenby. My family has lived in the Taylor community for 95 years. I don't have a problem with Joe Stepp selling his land. I have a problem with it being rezoned to R2 because of what Mr. Williamson has sat here and stated, and he knows the R2 is for the density. If someone wanted to buy his property, not rezone it to R2, we're good with that. I know now that my road will not handle 2 fire trucks meeting or 2 utility trucks meeting. I live on Thompson Springs Road. I invite every one of you to ride out there and look at it. I know my husband has spoke with most of you, Tom Owenby. He is not in favor of this. And as it's been stated, your constituents should be your concern, not one landowner, not one out-of-town developer. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Anyone else want to speak before Mr. Stepp comes up?
I do.
Yes, ma'am. You state your name when you get up here, ma'am. And you can adjust that mic all you need to.
Okay. My name is Patricia West. I live on Kinser Road. My grievance today, and I'll get emotional about it because I'm passionate like you are. My grievance is not against Joe Stepp personally. I'm 66 years old. I have known Joe Stepp since I was probably 5, when I knew exactly who somebody was. I've watched him live in this community. I've watched him farm. I've watched him improve his land to the point he could. And everybody has a right to do what they want to with their property. But I've lived on Kinser Road for at least 57 years of my life. I left a little while, but I've come back to my home place. My daddy died at the age of 91. He has lived in Taylor's community all but 10 years at that time on the same piece of property. So my whole life, I have seen Joe Stepp's farm. I can see it from the home I live in. I can see it from my mother and daddy's home. I see the traffic every day for approximately 245 students. Less than that, I go because some ride the bus. But I live on Kinser Road where I see that traffic going to that school every day, morning and evening. You can't pull out of your driveway between the hours of 7:15 and 8 o'clock because you can't get out. You can't get in or out of your driveway from 2:15 to 3 o'clock because of that school traffic.
And this will happen for Bates Pike, it will happen for Kinser Road, an increase in traffic. New Hope Road will also have an increase in traffic, because students don't all go to Taylor School. Some of those students in those homes will go to Lake Forest. And whether they build townhouses, whether they build apartments, whether they build $200,000 or $300,000 homes, that is going to be a lot of doors. And all of you, except for Howard, knows where this is better than anybody else. He knows what the traffic's like through that street of Kinser Road and New Hope and Bates Pike. So I'm asking you, like Mr. Williamson did, there needs to be studies done before you vote yes. And I agree with him as well that things are going backwards here. A zone should not be approved until studies have been done and a clear design placed to you as to what is going to be built there. Of course, I realize they could give you whatever they wanted to as far as building a subdivision or townhomes, and once the zoning goes through, they could even change that, because R2 allows for apartments, it allows for a lot of different things. Our community is a beautiful community. We're all very close, most of us, and a lot of us have family that live there and have lived there for years. So I just ask you, before you vote, that you do some sort of traffic analysis, that you do some sort of making sure that, I've lost my train of thought, but that's okay, I'm old. But I'm here just for my community and the fact that I love where I live. I don't want to live anywhere else. And I think a lot of the people who are in this room from 4th District and Taylor's community, that's what they're looking for. They want a safe place to continue living. The high density will bring more crime. It'll bring in all different types of people. And we just want to be sure our community is still safe and that we can travel our roads at a safe pace. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. West. Yes, Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, I was listening to the conversation that she was having, and I've heard several times that we should do a study prior to the plat being brought in. The problem is that if we've done that, be ready to do another one afterwards, because right now there's no way of knowing what the number is or what's coming in at all. So it would be a wasted amount of funds just to go to something to have to redo again once the plat comes in to show exactly what we're doing the study for in the amount of homes and so on that would be there.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Reed.
I agree with what she just said. I didn't catch her name, but I do agree. I don't like the apartment idea either, and there's several things in R2 that we don't like. So I just wanted to state that before Mr. Joe Stepp comes.
Okay, Mr. Stepp.
No, I didn't get anything written down. I've heard, let's see, and by the way, is that landfill man gone? Because I've heard that's going to put a landfill out there, and I need to talk to him. But I've heard everything that's going to be out there. Landfill, government, low-income housing, what else? Oh, these apartments. You know, it's just been a barrage of things that, because the R2 does allow such things, so they tell me. But now, I really don't care about doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Mr. Williamson's sitting here. Mr. Williamson's tried to buy some of my property, and I told him, as long as I'm farming, I can't sell it. I can't sell my hay field. Got to feed my cows. He did call me the other day, and he does have concern about apartments being built out there, which I find kind of ironic from a man that owns 300. But I told him that there wasn't going to be any apartments. But then, as we talked on, I asked him, did he have children school age? Yes, he did. How many? 4, he said. Did they go to Taylor School? No, he said, Taylor School doesn't have too good a reputation. We homeschool. He said he did give money to the school, though, which I'm sure that the teachers appreciate, so they can buy the kids that don't have the money to buy books and paper and pencils. So, oh yeah, one other thing. Back on the north property line that joins him, he also told me that he planned to build $1 million house. And when he builds this $1 million house, I'm saying it's not about the apartments, but when he builds this $1 million house, he don't have to look at nobody within a half a mile of him. So that's Mr. Williamson's, I think, biggest concern. As far as his concern about apartments, I'm going to restrict the property against apartments. If and when I sell that property, it will be restricted against apartments, landfills, government housing. There was some other big something, let's see.
Trailer park.
Trailer parks, yes, absolutely. It'll be restricted against those. So that should eliminate the concern of what's going to be built. Now, if I sell that property like it is, FAR, whatever, then it's not going to be worth nearly as much as it is if it's R2 high density. And folks, that's my 401k, and I'm going to cash it out for all I can. That's my reason for R2. If not, then it's just going to be worth less money. As far as the roads go, I agree that there needs to be some roads built, some roads done. But I would ask the folks that live on Kinser Road and these other roads, if they'd be willing to give just 3 feet of their land to build that road. It don't matter how many studies you do, it says we need to do this or we need to do that. If nobody's willing to do it, then you're not going to get it done anyway unless you condemn it. So that's just a number of things. And the school, my daddy went to Taylor School, I went to Taylor School, my kids went to Taylor School, my grandkids went to Taylor School. Nothing don't happen, good Lord willing, in about 5 years I'm going to have a grandson, great-grandson, go to Taylor School. I personally would never do anything that I thought would be detrimental to that school. They talk about the fire trucks that can't meet on the road. I agree, it's narrow. It's too narrow. But the thing about it is, again, somebody's got to give just enough land to get that road widened. I don't remember if Mr. Davis was the mayor. Were you the mayor, Gary, when they started the fire thing?
I was commissioner when they started.
Okay, he was commissioner. Okay. These folks have all got fire protection, most of them, within 5 minutes or less of their house. Some of them more, but I'm talking about these folks that are sitting right here. The county came to my dad and asked him if he'd sell them an acre of ground on the corner there next to the school to build a fire hall. Dad told him he'd give him an acre of ground, and he did. That fire hall at Taylor School that protects all these people is sitting on an acre of ground that my dad gave him. So here's the thing. I'm just wanting to cash out my farm for the most money. I started not to do the apartment thing and not exempt or not restrict it from apartments because I had thought about maybe building 2 or 3 to have some income. But anyway, we're going to restrict it. One other thing about the roads that I would tell you. If you live on Horton Road, Carson Road, Fraser Road, anywhere down in there, and you don't want to drive through this development to get to town or wherever you're going, you can turn on Alternate Road. You don't have to come up through there. If from this development, it's a little bit unique in the fact that you can turn on Kinser Road and go to 64 Highway. You can go up Bates Pike and go to 64 Highway. So I would doubt that all the traffic that'd be coming from there would be going on Kinser Road. And really and truly, I guess that's probably about all that I've got to say. It's just, for me, getting a little old, and I'd like Pat said back there, I've known Pat all my life about it. Mr. Williamson, I haven't known. He moved in there about 3 or 4 years ago, and I feel like he's done a real good job getting the folks to come out. And that's all I've got to say.
Commissioner Pete.
Joe, would it be all right if we made the rezoning contingent on you restricting the property?
What do you mean?
He can agree to do that, but we can't as a county force it.
Okay.
What do you want to know?
We were just curious if we could make it contingent on you placing the restrictions on the property, but the county attorney said we have to vote on it as is.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do conditional zoning. They at one time allowed that, and people did it, but currently, right now, you cannot do.
But we know your word is your word.
He's got it written down. I see him writing it down right there, and what I told you is what I'll do.
Got it written there, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Evers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to commend him on doing some deed restrictions to try to quell some of the opposition and their concerns. And also that he brought up some good points and things for all of us commissioners to review as we move forward on this request of rezoning. The roads usually are a 40 feet right of way or a 50 feet right of way. There are ways to widen the roads without having to acquire more land. And a good example of that was 22nd Street when the city took it from the county. Half of 22nd Street in the northwest section of Bradley County. If you want to drive down it, you can see what they've done. And they've stayed within the right of ways, and they didn't have to take anyone's land or condemn it or anything. There are ways of widening those roads. And depending on the traffic study, if the county does request a traffic study, it'll be depend on the preliminary plat, because doing a traffic study prior to the preliminary plat is kind of premature, because you don't know exactly how much traffic we're talking about until all that comes together. But that's kind of thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The only thing I'd like to say about the roads is, the roads out there go to the ditch. That's about it. So they'd have to be properly given to widen that road or whatever, because you gotta have a ditch line. And most roads out there go to the ditch, and that's it.
Mr. Chairman, could I respond? Thank you. And basically, yeah, and that's correct. Yeah, there is a ditch, and actually what happens is a culverts gets put in and catch basins get put in, and then the road goes over top of the over top of the culverts, and the roads become adequate, and then two fire trucks can pass and everything. A great example, like I said, is 22nd Street. Just go out and take a look. The other part of 22nd Street is owned by the county. The first portion of 22nd Street is owned by the city, and that construction just took place a couple of years ago, and you'll see the difference between the two roads. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other commissioners have any comment on that? Yes, Commissioner.
I just like to thank Mr. Stepp for his fair way of dealing with this and taking care. You know, man lives this many years in this community, and this is his family, this is his friends. I appreciate you stepping up and making that restriction. You've been good to Taylor's community. You've been good to the 4th District. I've seen that when we looked at the school out there, and we needed some land, and you were out there to really assist the commissioners to make good decisions for that school. So thank you for what you've done today.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. Commissioner Pete?
Ms. Omby,
Yes.
with these restrictions, and we can talk about it more later, but what is the consensus, do you think, of your neighbors with all these restrictions being put on the deed restrictions? And us looking at all the other aspects?
Yeah.
You can, yes, please.
Thank you for asking. Yes, I mean, that's our concern. Our concern is not the community growing. We're all about it. I mean, Bradley County, look how Bradley County's grown. You know, I mean, it's quickly growing. Our schools are becoming better. I think if that is something that is in ink and a guideline that absolutely has to be followed by the law, then I think our family would be good with that. Our community would be good with it.
Well, you've lived there, your family's
My
lived there
family
the
has lived there
longest besides
95
Joe Steph,
years.
so that's why I was
Yeah.
asking you.
Yes, my grandfather, my great-grandfather actually purchased the land in 1927, right? My uncle, my parents, well, my mother, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, myself, my daughter, these people right here, we've all gone to Taylor School too. You know, I mean, I get, you know, Mr. Williamson's family is homeschooled, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I feel like our school is really good. I feel like a lot of the schools in the county are really good. We have some good teachers. We have a good principal at Taylor. I appreciate Mr. Stepp's family for providing land to the fire department. I knew Les Stepp, wonderful man. We appreciate it. I feel like my grandfather would have done the same thing had he owned land touching the school.
We appreciate your opinion, that's why I asked you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Mr. Hughes?
Mr. Chairman, as the only commissioner that's on the planning commission, I will assure you that, and Mr. Thompson, request an impact study be done on that plaque, so we will have that done prior to.
Mr. Thompson?
I'd like to hear from somebody else, since Mr. Stepp came up and said he was restricted against government housing, landfill, trailer parks, or whatever. I'd like to hear somebody else speak to that.
I can't hardly talk, but I'll speak. First of all, I'm William Snadoff. I was born and raised up there on Thompson Springs Road 83 years ago. My mother chose to have a midwife to come. She's the one that delivered me, and I'm extra proud of my heritage. And they came down from the Smoky Mountains when the U.S. government made the park area up there. They happened to live in the vicinity that they condemned and made the national forest up there and the national park of the Great Smoky Mountains. And I've got relatives up there that I don't even know. And but anyway, I appreciate the Stepp family. I've known Joe all of his life, and I knew his daddy, and they was good people. And we have lived in that area out there, and there's lots of good people out there, and God forbid you don't hear news about folks that does good for other people, and our news media, I just don't understand, but it's not news to most of us to hear people get out there and do something good. If you go out there and do something that somebody condemns you and says you're misappropriating or stealing or doing something like that, but the folks out there in our area, in our community, is basically all good people. Like I said, I've lived there all my life, and for Joe to step up and come up and put those restrictions on his property, I think that took and showed what the Stepp family is really like. They've always done for the community. I remember when I was going to Taylor School, I started out down there, and I'd like to find a picture of the old 3-room wooden building that was down there when I started school down there. We had 3 classes in there and pot-bellied stove. And but that's what it was like when I started Taylor School. Then when and Joe's daddy, we was out there scraping with hose like you used to work your garden with to clean us off a place to play basketball at Taylor School. And you can't dribble the basketball on grass. You've got to have a solid foundation to dribble basketball on. That's what we went through out there. And Joe's daddy, Joe, he won't remember it because he wasn't around at that time. His daddy owned a team of horses, and he lent us boys those horses to go up there. And Mr. Kimsey had the bluff there next to where Joe's house is built now, where he lived. And Joe's daddy, Leslie Stepp was his name, and he lent us that team of horses to go up here and snake some cedar poles off of the bluff down to the schoolhouse so that we could put our backboards up to play basketball. And the girls, they played on one end of that court, and the boys practiced on the other. That's how far that Taylor School has come. And I've done a few little things myself, and I don't like to boast about things about helping the school out, but back when my wife was living, well, we had our children in school down there, and it's a good school, and I appreciate what Joe's done. I'll hush a moment about things now and let you get back to your line of business. I know that you don't like to hear me ramble on, but I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate if you go and do what you say you're going to do. I like to see people, and like Joe said, that the handshake used to be a signed document as far as the old folks used to be, and now if you go buy a car, you got to sign a half-inch bunch of papers. And used to, you'd go in and shake hands, and that was it. And I'll tell you, before I hush, I'm going to tell you another little one. When I built my house, and my wife there in 1965, there on Thompson Springs Road, and there was a Cherokee Valley Federal Savings and Loan in town. Most of you will remember it. And Mr. Kelly was the guy's name. I can't remember his first name. I don't remember signing anything. I remember shaking hands with that gentleman when I went in and told him that I said I need $5,500. And he said, well, what for? And I told him that I was finishing up my house, and I had to get a well dug and a septic tank put in and all this, and I said I need that money, and me and my wife, we bought the furniture with this money, and I thought, my goodness, I'll never be able to pay $5,500, and I worked at Peerless Woolen Mill at that time, and all of you remember when they was out there, but me and Mr. Kelly shook hands, and I don't remember signing a paper for that $5,500. He wrote me a check and told me to take it down there and put it in the bank so I could just use it as I needed it. Now that is how things has changed, and Joe is relying on the neighbors and all you people up here to take his word, and I will take his word, because I know him. And it's just like Howard Thompson there, when he tells me something, well, I just count it as being I go over and hey, you and Dawn know that he's got the flea market out there, and I go over and I talk to Howard, and him and me are good friends. Well, that's my opinion of it. I don't know what his opinion is. He may want to kick my tail in and get me out of here before it's that goes. He'll hit a problem there, because I'm not no fighter. No, I never was. I'll just lay down and play dead if somebody comes and jumps on my cage. Thank you for your attention, and thank all the neighbors for coming out, and we found out what was really going on, because we was all guessing. And it's just like Joe said, everybody's here said that there might be a sanitary landfill out there, or he's heard everything, and I'm sure he did, because he said he did. And that's the reason why I know that it's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sneed. Mr. Peete and Commissioner Blake.
So to clarify, if deed restrictions are put on this deed, then it doesn't matter who buys it from Mr. Joe Stepp. These things can never be done, and that's your protection. Also, clarify, Mr. Chairman, if I'm wrong, because Ms. Linda Cash is not here, superintendent of schools. If more children go to the school, we get paid, or the state pays the school system per child, they get more money, and it would actually help Taylor School to get more students.
Not the capital project side of it.
Not the
Right.
capital side of it, but as far as the paying for the student, yes.
That's the real change.
All right, thank you.
Did I say something, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Sneed.
I didn't mention that Joe Stepp is my friend too. And again, that's as far as I'm concerned. I've known him, and I've got the right to call him the boy. I've known the boy ever since he was a Lehigh to Grasshopper, but I count him as my friend, and certainly all the neighbors that come out, I love them. And that's no said on that. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. All right, move them. Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Just a quick question, Bentley, just a quick question on all that we've heard here. You chatted about having another zone created or what have you.
Yeah,
So,
Thursday night.
walk us through that a little bit, because I think Mr. Stepp has been grateful about it. He didn't have to do all this, he's going to, should address most of these concerns, but in the future,
We're having the
we may
planning
not
commission.
have someone like Joe Stepp do this.
Yeah, we're having some planning commission meeting Thursday night, and I'm going to propose to the planning commission that we do. Right now we have R1 and R2, but to do an R3 zone that has apartments, travel trailer parks, and RV parks, and then take them out of R2, so you don't. So that one, the only time you can do it is in the R3 zone.
So basically, if we didn't want trailer parks, we didn't want apartments, we could, if we did want, we would have to go to R3.
Yes.
So in other words, this granularizes it a little bit more. And I guess it's not grandfather clause in, right? But
No, once you created the new zone, you would have, in order to, the uses, unless you already had it built, in order to do new usage, you have to do it.
So in other words, this is, I wouldn't say settled, but going forward, this R3 should address a lot of these concerns. I'm sure this isn't the last time we're gonna hear this.
Yeah.
Now, just to be clear though, it would not change if it's something you all had already zoned R2 and
Right.
they had already built
Right. That's what I'm saying.
apartments or any of
Grandfather
those
clause,
things.
anything in progress right now?
You couldn't change that.
It would just be
but
from that point forward.
Any new, yes.
Ms. Orme? Yes.
And this may be a question for Bentley. What do surrounding counties, I know we've talked about this county being backwards, it seems like, how the commission approves, the planning commission approves before knowing what is going to be built. What do surrounding counties do?
This is the only county I've ever worked in that has zoning. The only two in southeastern Tennessee are us and Hamilton. I would assume the process is the same though. I mean, it's in Tennessee code as to how the zoning process takes place.
Okay,
we can always work to improve Coleman. I think that's what we're trying to do here. Yes, sir. If you'll come up here, please, sir. Give us your name, please, sir.
Steve Settles.
Okay.
I live on Thompson Springs as well. With his generosity, what moving forward, how many doors will be on the property if you eliminate the apartments? I mean, is there still gonna be townhomes, or, I mean, do we have any idea how that's gonna work?
Again, I think, Bentley, if you could answer that, I mean, until we see it, we won't know, correct?
Not until they submit the plan, the preliminary plat and the engineering drawings, but if it goes to R2, it's more than likely gonna have townhomes and single-family residences on it.
Yeah, I mean,
But as far as the number,
that's still a concern because of the traffic. I mean, just because it's not apartments don't mean there's not gonna be
I understand
more
that,
people in the community.
But like Mr. Hughes said, they will look at doing a traffic study there to address those things as well. That's a good point.
I will shut up, I promise. Right now, our county road, I mean, if y'all been on our road, Thompson Springs Road is so narrow. It is hard for sometimes a car to meet if you're meeting a good-sized truck. We have begged the sheriff's office to come sit in our driveways. Come sit out here, we're happy for you to come sit here, because people are all the time, I mean, they speed, we have children, animals, we can't, the way it is right now, it is unsafe to walk that road. So adding that many people to it, which I know, I mean, our road is a cut through now from Taylor School over to, Splash Springs, thank you, brain dead. But, that's a true concern of ours, and I feel like it is a real concern.
I understand that. That's a concern I hear throughout the county as well. Thank you. Somebody.
And it stretches all the way back to Horton Road as well. It's not just Osmond Road, it's not just Cancer Road. I don't think people realize the traffic that's even on Horton Road through those school hours of the morning, of the afternoon. Hey, I don't mind to give 3 feet to expand the road, but when I do that, it's gonna be literally in my front porch. I'm right on the road. I also think you need to take into consideration if it is a townhome, is it gonna be townhomes that you sell? Is it gonna be townhomes that you rent? You're gonna have a whole different class of people. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I have children, I hope to have grandchildren, and I don't want the crime to go up out there, and it's already up. There's people on drugs walking the streets every day, walking on our property. And that's going up when you put things on there that shouldn't be there. And we can't get them to come patrol out there now for traffic. And people, I'm telling you, jump the hill right in front of my house on Horton Road on a daily. And I have to beg for them to come sit there, and they don't. So these people are still trying to avoid Taylor School, go around Horton Road, to go to Lake Forest or wherever they're going, or even just to work. So the traffic is going to expand way further than just these 2 roads, which are a huge main concern, or 3 roads, or however. It goes further back. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I love Joe, by the way. He's my family, and I do. I love him to death. I just have a big concern.
Ma'am, if you'll come up and speak here, or at least we can hear your name.
Well, I'm Valerie's dad.
Okay.
But I do think that just because you rent, if you are someone that's to rent an apartment, doesn't mean that you're a bad, trashy person.
No.
It doesn't mean it's gonna bring in all kinds of bad people. Because I have some rental property that they're all very nice people.
There is nice people that rent. No,
You sound like you were labeling people that rent.
no, I'm not trying to label.
That's fine. We understand where you come from, both of you. Thank you. We're gonna move on, to item B. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't see your hand up.
My name's Tony Kaywood. I live in the community. I came here today to hear what was being said so I would know firsthand, okay? We all have to think about the fact that, yes, Mr. Stepp has every right to sell his property for as much as he can get. I support that. I also have lived out there all my life and know that property. and know that we are not going to be approaching 2,000 homes no matter what, because there's such a large quantity of that land that's not going to be buildable. We also have to look at the fact that a lot of money is going to have to be spent in infrastructure in the development itself. A developer is going to come in and spend the least amount to get the most amount. Obviously, that's business. Mr. Stepp volunteering to restrict against apartments, government housing, and high-density trailer parks, I commend him for that. But when we're all talking about a traffic study, once this zoning passes, the traffic study would be done by a developer, and I may be about to speak out of turn, Brantley, but your office would have the right to say whether or not a project was allowed depending on that traffic study. The county's not required to build to meet use. The builder is required to build to the use that the study shows is possible. Is that correct? Okay, that's all I got.
Thanks, sir. Item D. Commissioner Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, it's dealing with the location. I'm guiding down here is the County Archives building. However, it's the location that we made for the Sheriff's Department above the UT extension. This, as they're moving to the Pie Center, that is opening up the bottom of it. What I'm looking at is to hopefully send this to Building Land to get approved to use it also. Galen Miller has came here to speak about the issue of archives and how drastic it's gotten as of lately.
Miller?
Mr. Hughes contacted me on Friday, and Holly has talked to Mr. Hughes prior to that. First of all, let me say the archives, Tina in the archives has, it's the best it's ever been as far as she's out of room. She's out of room. That's it. I have 100 and probably 150 boxes now that's sitting in my office. We filed 17,000 cases last year. So we're in a new year. So here we go. We've got to get rid of old to bring in the new. Mr. Hughes brought that to my attention. I have no understanding of basically what he's saying. If move it all there, take what we can, do what we can do. But Holly has, how many boxes do you have now? 150 in her office.
But I share upstairs with the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
It's great.
And this doesn't have anything to do with Tina or that. Tina's just out of room. I've been here 42 years. We did get an extension on the archives, which helped tremendously. But when you don't have anywhere to put them, you don't have anywhere to put them. So it's becoming just a cycle over and over again as to where to put them. And this is no slam to Tina. Tina's there, and she's done a great job as far as organizing, but she's organized out. We're boxed out. I have the jail, the juvenile, the courthouse, and it's boxed up. And if we could just somehow, with Mr. Hughes's plan, I don't know what basically his plan is, but he just asked me to come to say today just basically what we're doing with how we feel about it. It's not that what's there can't go down and get, but it's up here and it needs to go somewhere to bring in the new. And that's basically what I told him on the telephone.
Okay, well, my understanding is a lot of the documents, some people would say, well, let's just put all those digitally and not have, but you have to keep hard copies of a lot of documents.
Oh, they're permanent records.
Yes.
They are permanent records. And we have started, when we got the technology to do that, of scanning, which has been absolutely amazing, but we're talking about 1944, 1943, 1953 when I was born. So all of that's down there. So, and even older than that, even in the 1800s. The library took the historical part, some of it, but when Mr. Hughes called about apparently the property that could come available to accommodate this, I don't know if we would keep the current on site or everything would go there. We just have an archives off site, as Holly uses it now. That's the only reason I'm here today. When Mike called me about this issue. And as far as the boxes, I mean, first of all, it's fire hazard. We have nowhere to put them upstairs. They're everywhere. So we're searching, scratching and searching for the old ones. So that's the only reason I'm here today, and that's the reason Holly's here. So whatever the plan is that Mr. Hughes is going to present, it would be good. But this has nothing to do with Tina or the archives. It's just the courthouse. The courthouse, when it was built, was not prepared for what was coming, and it's here now. So we have to deal with it now. So that's why I'm here. But while I am here, I want to thank Tim Mason, Commissioner Tim Mason. He finished a job this weekend. My grand jury room at the jail looks awesome, and I appreciate it. He and his crew have worked very hard to help us, and I want to thank him personally for that. He texted me over the weekend. I thanked him that way, but I want to thank him personally here because Tim does a great job in keeping things going, and the courtroom looks good, the grand jury room looks good, and I really appreciate that. My staff does too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pete?
I don't think we've seen this building land. We already voted on this, that the entire building would be archives for anybody, I'm pretty sure.
I think we did.
We said as soon as UT moved out, that it would all become an archive building for a courthouse, for a sheriff's department, for anybody that needed it in the county. We need to pull it, but I'm pretty sure we did.
Ms. Moultrie, could you look and see that? And if not, we will send it to that building.
The best I can remember
We
is
can vote
just
on
for
it,
the
but I don't
upstairs,
think
we
we-
never did do the bottom level, but however,
Okay.
if it hasn't been placed, that was one of the requests is to do that. I think it'd be a proactive stance to start, because it's not just Gayla, every department is starting to have problems
Yeah,
with this.
yeah, it's just not us. It's all going there, and she has. I mean, if you go there, if you've not been in the archives, you need to go because it is very organized. But she's organized out, and we're growing. And as I said, 17,000 cases last year. We're trying to get new cases in this year, and then the old ones are still here. We have nowhere to put them. But now that the voting, I don't know. I'm just here at Mr. Hughes's request to say that we have an issue. So, and I'm not the only one that has the issue with that. But we are scanning now, and we're going back when we get time to scan O files, which is wonderful. But you know, it's hard to go down and get the 1844s and scan all those and what's not at the library.
Do that in your spare time?
And yeah, my spare time. Yeah, I appreciate you.
Thank you. Mr. Pete?
Mr. Chairman, can the committee meet next Monday at 11:30 if that's the only agenda item? Building and land members?
You want to call one next Monday?
Yes, if it's okay with everyone, 11:30. And that way it can be placed on Monday's agenda. We have discussed it. Seems like it's something that needs to be done immediate.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is there personnel that sits in that building? In the building we're talking about, the archive?
As of right now, the only person that's there is, besides the UT extension, which is moving out, is me. I'm there most of the time when I'm not at the sheriff's department itself.
Once it's set up as a full building, will there need to be staff there?
This is,
They have to be in the building with it?
if it's decided to make it a centralized location, and I'm just talking off the cuff, okay? This is Mayor Davis's employee as far as Tina, or it falls under him normally to employ it. So I hate to say that. That will be his choice, or what have you, but it would make sense that if it was centralized there to have a person there.
Thank you. All right, sure. Active day. Communication from the audience. Anybody else want to speak for the commission? All right, great. Announcements. Next meeting, Monday, March 21st at 12, I can't speak. At 12 o'clock here at the courthouse. Juvenile committee will meet tomorrow at noon, Juvenile Center. Road committee will meet March 16th at 11 o'clock here in the commission room. Arts Alive is March 18th, that's Friday, 10 o'clock at Lake Forest Middle School. And Building and Land will meet next Monday prior to the commission meeting at 11:30. We are adjourned.